Okay, this week's parsha is Vayelech, and it is actually the shortest portion of the Torah, only 20 verses. In many years, it goes with Nitzavim, the last week's parsha. Many years they're actually put together because Nitzavim is also very short, but it has to do with if it's a Shana Mu'uberet, what's called what has a leap year. But this year it's all by itself, Vayelech. And there's really three themes of this parsha. One is that Moshe is not going to go into Israel. And so again, God tells Moshe to, in a sense, hand over the mantle of leadership to Yehoshua. So that's one of the themes in the parsha. The next one is the mitzvah of Hakel, that in the Sukkos after a Shemitah year. Now remember, here in Eretz Yisrael, starting on Rosh Hashanah, we enter into what's called the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year, the 7th year. And I've been working with my son now for a month, trying to get everything taken care of, because during Shemitah, most agricultural works are forbidden. And it's a Shabbat for the land, for the trees, for the fields, for the produce. That's a whole other subject. But in this week's parsha, in the Sukkos following a Shemitah year, there's a mitzvah called Vayakel, which means that everyone is gathered together. People come to the temple and they read from the book of Deuteronomy, which we're about to finish. And it's once every 7 years, this idea of everyone coming together, just men, women, children, everyone comes and gathers in Yerushalayim. The last part of the parsha is, in a sense, a continuation of the theme of exile and redemption that we've been following throughout the entire book of Deuteronomy. And here, though, there's a bit of a change, because God reveals to Moshe, and then Moshe reveals to the people that despite all of the warnings that the Torah is prophesying, is predicting, that the people will eventually, in a sense, rebel against God, and all of the we'll call it the curses that have been mentioned throughout the book of Deuteronomy will be brought down on their heads by their own actions. But the end of the parsha, God says to Moshe, I'm going to teach you a song, and then you need to teach it to the people. And you have to write this song down and teach it to the people. And next week's parsha, Azino, is the song. But the introduction to the song and the reasons for the song are at the end of this parsha. And we'll get to the song next week. But when I was preparing what should we talk about tonight, I came upon the following idea, which I think is, for many, many people, will be a novel idea. Because here, Moshe is being told to teach this song to Bnei Yisrael. And according to tradition, there are 10 archetypal songs sung throughout creation. 9 of them have already been sung, and they're all in the Bible, in the Tanakh. And the 10th one is waiting for Mashiach. Shir Hashem, Shir Chadash. They will sing to God a new song. That will be revealed at the time of Mashiach. But what I want to point out is, even though the song Xeno is next week, but again, the introduction is this week, it gives us a completely different view of who Moshe Rabbeinu is, who Moses is. Usually when we think of Moshe, we call him Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe, our rabbi, our teacher, because it was Moshe who received the Torah at Sinai. And for 40 years, he was teaching the people. That's what they were mostly doing in the desert. Moshe was teaching the elders, the Kohanim, the princes of the tribes, and all the people. The entire Torah, the whole, not just the written Torah, but the oral Torah. So we think of Moshe Rabbeinu as teacher, leader, even though we're told he was the most humble person, but he was also one of the strongest leaders. And this is a whole subject in itself, but this paradigm of Jewish leaders who are very humble, going back to the burning bush, Moshe did his best to avoid being the leader. He didn't want to be the leader. He didn't feel that he was qualified. There were other people better than him. That was his humbleness. But in the leadership role, throughout the entire Torah, from the time that he comes on the scene in the beginning of the book of Exodus, he is the greatest leader. And his humbleness does not compromise his strength and his ability to lead. In fact, his humbleness is his greatest strength. But we're going to explore a different picture of Moshe Rabbeinu, because there is a tradition that Moshe Rabbeinu knew how to sing the song of every creation. Now, we don't see that written explicitly in the Torah, and it's very different than the way we think of Moshe. But what I'm going to say now will hopefully, in a sense, broaden our perspective of who Moshe Rabbeinu was. Because of the 10 archetypal songs sung through our creation, Moshe is involved in 5 of them, a full half of all the archetypal songs. So let's go through the 10 archetypal songs very, very quickly. And this is according to Jewish tradition, and it's written in the Aramaic translation on the first verse of the Song of Songs, of Shir Shirim. There's a very, very long explanation of the Song of Songs. And in it, it's mentioned this idea of the 10 archetypal songs. One of them is the Song of Songs. So we have, according to tradition, Adam HaRishon initiated the song, the Song of Shabbat, Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat. We don't have time to go into all the explanations right now. I'm just going to go through what they are. The second one is the Song of the Sea. And of course, Moshe Rabbeinu led Am Yisrael in singing that song. The third one was the Song of the Well in the book of Bamidbar. It's only 2 verses. And this is after Miriam passes away. And for a short time, like the water was there on her merit. And then it returned on Moshe's merit. And the people sang a song. It's in the book of Bamidbar. And it's called the Song of the Well. But it has a lot to do with Moshe Rabbeinu, because it talks about the leaders of Israel. Then there's the Song of Azino, which will be next week, that Moshe leads and teaches the people. So already all 3 of them, other than Adam Rishon, have to do with Moshe Rabbeinu. And then we're told that when Yeshua stopped the sun and the moon, how did he do it? So the Talmud explains that he sang the song of the sun. He sang the song of the moon. And by doing that, he was able to stop the sun and the moon from their rotation. That's a whole thing in itself also, how to understand that. It was for sure a miracle. But the question, where did Yeshua learn to sing the song of the sun and the moon? Well, remember, Moshe Rabbeinu knew how to sing the song of every creation. So he learned it from Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's the fourth. Then there's the song of Hannah, after she gives birth to Shmuel. There's a song of Devorah. She sings after a tremendous victory. There's the Song of Songs. And when Mashiach comes, there'll be another song revealed. And according to tradition, we have the phrase talking about Moshe, Hu hagoel harishon, Hu hagoel ha'acharon. He is the first leader, first redeemer, and he will be the last redeemer. So according to tradition, even though we talk about Mashiach ben David, for sure there will be an aspect of David in the Mashiach, but there will also be an aspect of Moshe in the Mashiach. In fact, the first two letters of Mashiach, a mem and a shin, are the first two letters of Moshe's name, a mem and a shin. So here, there are 5 of the 10 archetypal songs sung throughout creation have to do with Moshe Rabbeinu. So here's like a whole other side of Moshe Rabbeinu that we might not have realized. So next week, we will hear and discuss the song that Moshe teaches the people. So that's an amazing thing in itself. So towards the end of the Parsha, so it says like this, for those who want to follow, it's chapter 31, verse 19. So it says, V'ata kitvu lachem et hashir hazot, v'lamda et b'nei Yisrael, sima b'fihem, laman tiyeh li hashira hazot la'ed b'b'nei Yisrael. So it says, and now, write for yourself this song. This is the song that God is going to teach him, which is Azino, and teach it to the people and put it in their mouths. In other words, don't sing it to them once. Go over it with them over and over, that they learn the lessons of this song, in order that this song will be to me a witness with the children of Israel. So in a different part of the Parsha, it talks about Moshe writing down the entire Torah. And according to tradition, this is all happening on the last day of his life. The last 4 Parshas of the Torah, last week's Parsha, Nitzavim, this week's Parsha, next week's Parsha, and the Parsha that we read, Zota Bracha on Simchas Torah, all happened on the last day of Moshe's life. 4 Parshas, all on the same day. So Moshe is now completing the Torah, and he's giving it to the people, and they put a copy in the Aron Kodesh, in the Ark. But what the sages learned from this, an amazing thing, they learned from the verse that we just read, which seemed to be talking about the song of Azino. But because in this Parsha, there's also the matter of Moshe completing the Torah, the sages received a tradition that this is the last mitzvah of the Torah. This is the 613th mitzvah of the Torah, the last mitzvah of the Torah, which is that every person is supposed to write a Sefer Torah. Now, most people don't do that. So how do we fulfill that mitzvah? So we're told that it means that everyone should participate in the writing of a Torah, which means that if one contributes money to a Sefer Torah, then that's participating in the writing of the Torah. But amazingly, they make another connection that the whole Torah is called a song. Not just the Song of Azino, which is being introduced here, and we will learn next week, but the whole Torah is called a song. So that's an amazing thing. And there was a discussion in the Talmud about how do you remember the Torah that we learn? There's so much to learn. How do we remember it? So different sages gave their opinion, and Rabbi Akiva said, sing your Torah every day. Sing your Torah every day. So this is a beautiful way to understand it. And we're told that there are 4 levels of understanding the Torah. There are the letters. There are the crowns on some of the letters. Actually, most of the letters have crowns. There are the vowels. And the highest level is considered the way that we chant the Torah. On Shabbat, on Mondays and Thursdays, the one who's reading the Torah has their notes. They're not in the Torah, but we have a Masorah that there are notes of how to sing the verses and where the middle of the verses and where the end of the verses. Because in the Torah, there are no periods or no commas, no exclamation points, no question marks. So how do we know where a sentence begins and ends? So there is a whole oral tradition, but we're told that the highest level is the song of the Torah. So that is an amazing thing, but that's connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. Because Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who brought down the Torah and taught the Torah to the people. And as we said, is involved in 5 of the 10 archetypal songs sung throughout creation. So this, in a sense, gives us a different picture of Moshe Rabbeinu. We usually think of Moshe as being somewhat strict or severe or locked into this leadership role and constantly dealing with rebellions and all kinds of challenges. But here we see that there's another side of Moshe Rabbeinu that it's very, very important. This idea of singing your Torah every day. So it's a beautiful thing in most cheters. So Dara just says that she only counted 9. So let's see which one I left out. 1 second. Sure. Devorah, Hannah. Oh, yes, you're right. You're right. Thank you. Thank you, Dara. One of the Psalms, I believe it's the 18th Psalm that was written by David, is called a song. Even though sometimes we think of all 150 Psalms as songs, and they were songs. They were written as songs and they were accompanied by instruments. But one song in particular is called an archetypal song. And that, I believe, is the 18th Psalm. So thank you. That is the 9th. And the 10th will be the one that Mashiach will sing. So I want to go back and we'll add something else here. In the tractate of Baba Batra, there's a couple of pages about who wrote or edited the different books of the Torah. It's a whole matter that we can't get into right now. But one of the subjects is who wrote all of the Psalms. So many people think, well, David wrote all the Psalms. But we know that's not true because many of the songs begin with Bnei Korach, the sons of Korach. There's one that's attributed to Solomon. There's different people that their names are on the Psalms. According to tradition, the 90th through the 100th Psalm were composed by Moshe Rabbeinu. And what's interesting is that the Psalms that we sing at Kabbalat Shabbat are the songs of Moshe. And especially with Nusach Karlibach, where we're used to singing many of these Psalms. So here again, this adds to this idea that Moshe, there's a whole other side to him. He wrote Psalms 90 through 100, but today we sing a lot of these songs in Kabbalat Shabbat. So that just adds to our new dimension of thinking of Moshe Rabbeinu. But now I want to just go back quickly to a hint to this, because at the burning bush, so Moshe says, part of the dialogue that's going back and forth between God and Moshe, Moshe says, when I go back to Egypt, who should I tell them sent me? So God revealed a name that's only mentioned one time in the entire Tanakh, in the entire Bible, only one time, and that's I will be what I will be. Ehyeh asher ehyeh, Ekyeh asher Ekyeh. So the numerical value of this name, Ekyeh asher Ekyeh, equals 543, which is an inverse number of 345. That is Moshe's name. Moshe is 345. And the inverse is this name of God. And we know that if you read the letters of Moshe's name backwards, He, Shin, Mem, you get Hashem. So there's a whole mirror imaging happening here, where God is trying to draw out of Moshe his latent potential. And Moshe is trying to draw out of God as much as he can. But the idea I want to get to is the numerical value of this name, Ekyeh asher Ekyeh, 543, equals Koach Shira, the power of song. So one of the things that God was teaching Moshe at the bush was the power of song and its connection to Torah and its connection to redemption. So this is, in a sense, the source of Moshe's ability to be able to sing the song of every creation. Now later, David HaMelech, and remember, Moshe and David will be, in a sense, together in the soul of Mashiach. So according to tradition, David HaMelech composed what's called Perek Shira, the chapter of song, where he goes through 70 different creations, through day and night and the sun and the moon and the stars and the rivers and the trees and the animals and the birds and the insects. And every one has a song that it sings. There's a verse, but the verse is meant to be sung. And this is what's called Perek Shira, quite literally the chapter of song. So here we see that both Moshe and David, the two components of the future Redeemer, the Mashiach, both of them had this concept, this being tuned into the song of creation. And here in this week's Parsha, where we learned that it's a mitzvah to everyone to participate at least in writing a Sefer Torah, and that the Torah itself is called song. So when you put all of that together, that's a very, very beautiful thing. Now I just want to connect it quickly to Rosh Hashanah. Is if every creation has a song, that means every person has a song. Now what this means, it doesn't mean my favorite song is X. That's not what it means. What it means is every person has a purpose in this world. When we know our purpose, when we act towards fulfilling our purpose, that is how we're singing our song. And so when we're doing that, so we're in harmony with our very essence. A person's song or any creation's song is their essence, is their vibrational code. Because just physically, every creation is vibrating. All the atoms in everything are vibrating. And so each creation has a vibrational field. And that's what music is. Music is vibrations. So each person has their purpose. And when we're in tune, the pun is intended, when we're in tune with our purpose, then we're in harmony with our song with creation. But when we're not, when there's something off, or we're not in a good mood, or we're not acting towards fulfilling our purpose, so we feel out of kilter, we feel out of tune. And the potential song that we could be singing turns into a cacophony. So I want to end here with a blessing to all of us, because Rosh Hashanah is coming, Yom Kippur is coming, Sukkot is coming, Hoshana Rabbah, Shmini Atzeret, Simchas Torah. In other words, a lot of holidays, a lot of praying, a lot of joy, a lot of introspection. So, and a lot of singing. That even Rosh Hashanah is full of song and what's called nusach, the way we chant the prayers of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So I just want to bless everyone to be able to open their hearts, and we should all be in tune with our inner song, and that our inner song should be in tune with all of creation.